Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 betting and prop live stream for the Sentry Tournament of Champions. Gonna break down what to expect from conditions tomorrow, how I'm attacking the different prop boards around the industry, including Prize Picks, Underdog, Draftkings, and Underdog. Also some free balls and matchups over there as well to give you an idea of where my exposure is going and a preview behind my process out there for the last round of this week. You got Phil down there, so first off, welcome on in. Hopefully you're having a fantastic weekend, and hopefully we can make Sunday an even better Saturday than what was a really profitable day today. We ended up having that 4.75x slip full cashing, and if it weren't for a 0.5 hook on the Wyndham Clark birdie prop, it would have been a full 5-0 sweep for the day. So we got some positive momentum heading into the last day of this tournament, and hopefully we can keep that going out there for Sunday. Let's go ahead, start it off with first off a look at course conditions, which were pretty much exactly where we expected them to be. We thought it'd be a little bit easier than round 2, which was markedly lower scoring than what we had for Thursday, and that trend continued into moving day, partially because of the pin locations, which we went through them on the stream. Was very obvious that we were going to get an improvement in scoring, and you saw that both with the birdies are better per round and also with the bogeys are worse going down. So that's why it was about a half a stroke difference from round 2 to 3, and your fairway average went ever so slightly up as well, and then your green regulation average also went up a hair as well. So pretty much every average on the board got slightly better as the week has gone on, but it's worth noting out there for the last round, and for some reason I didn't have the weather up, so I'll fix that real quick. Let me bring up windy so we can all get on the same page here. The weather out here for the last round, it's the same kind of wind strength. It's not going to be any sort of like 15 to 20 miles an hour, but it's going in a completely different direction. So if we go over here to the Sunday slate, we take a look at some of these. It's first off a 180 difference in terms of that direction, and it doesn't look like it's going to be very significant. So they were saying on the broadcast that it is the harder wind direction out there for tomorrow. So maybe it does play closer to like a -4, -4.5 scoring average, but this -5.5 that we got for moving day is probably not going to be replicated once again tomorrow. It's worth noting that the Sunday pin locations are also more than likely going to be harder than what we had for Saturday. And while they haven't been posted quite yet, when we get those, we'll be deep diving them here on live stream, and we'll get a definitive look for whether they'll be harder or easier. So we'll circle back on these averages after we get those. But from the weather perspective, I have it getting a hair harder, but we'll have to see how much harder when we get the pins later on. What's going on, Phil? You're 5th in the big GPP. You need Matsuyama to choke. That's a good spot to be in, though. So, hey, if you're in 5th in the GPP, I'll root you on out there tomorrow. I am playing quite a bit of Matsuyama in my lineups, but hey, if he ends up faltering, I might not have the best showdown day, but at least I'll know in the back of my mind that you might be moving up those leaderboards. So best of luck out there with that. I don't have as many sweats this week. I'm in a little bit more single entry heavy, as it is only a 60-player field. Without the cut line, that's how I usually like to take my exposure. But heck, man, hopefully you take something down. That would be, like I said, I don't really have any sort of sweats. So best of luck to you out there, dude. All right, let's talk through the boards. So we're not going to have those pin locations to look at quite yet. When they drop, if anyone wants to throw that down in the live chat, that would be greatly appreciated. But what I want to do is I want to look through some of the sportsbook odds that we have on sites like a Fanduel, Draftkings, Caesars, William Hill that I have up here in the tabs, and compare them to what we have here on Underdog Prize Picks. And I was doing a little bit of a look before we got on live stream here. It looks like a lot of it has been accounted for in terms of the juice. So for example, like Xander Schauffele's at 66.5 out there on sportsbooks, and he's -150 out there for his under. So you can see on Underdog, they've gone out there ahead of some of those odds and put him down there at 66 strokes. Same thing for Morikawa. He's at 67.5, and he is juiced way towards the under. I believe one of the books had him at 66.5, and at that number, he was juiced over, right? So hence why he's at 67 strokes. That trend continues for most of the board here. So a Tony Finau, for example, 67.5 and under. Wyndham Clark, the same sort of thing. And what I'll say is a guy like Matt Fitzpatrick being at 67 strokes is not something that I necessarily agree with. In fact, let me see what they've done over here on Prize Picks. It looks like it's a lot of the same. 67 for guys like Thagala, Fitzpatrick. Players that have been a little bit sketchy to this point of the week even are over there at 67 strokes. So a lot of the guys there are decently in form. Like Thagala would probably be the one outlier of the guys there at 67. They go down to 67 and a half, and you've got Batia, who's towards the bottom of the leaderboard. Keep going down to 67 and a half. Like Kirk hasn't been very good this week. We're going to have players that we could fade at 67, maybe 67 and a half strokes, that if they shoot -5 would be going over. And if I think the wind direction is going to make things a little bit harder, and it's not even me that thinks that, I'm just trusting the local Mark Ralphie that had on the broadcast today. He's from the area. He's played this golf course a lot. He's got probably the most inside knowledge of this track of anyone that's on the broadcast. And he was saying that he thinks it's going to play a little bit harder. So that being said, this is an easy course. We don't have that much wind tomorrow. The value might be on fading a few players out here for Sunday. So I was really hoping to get those pin locations before we enter anything definitively. Doesn't mean that we can't look for some line value ahead of time, but I'm assuming that the pins are going to be a little bit trickier. And if we end up confirming that after going through the pin locations, and I'm probably going to be looking for some fades at these sort of numbers. So let's look at Prize Picks. It looks like there's a lot of the same lines. I don't see that many discrepancies out there from site to site. So for example, Dietrich's at 68. What is he over here? I think, yeah, he's at the same number, 68 strokes out there on each site. And I don't think there's many discrepancies that we have over there from Underdog to Prize Picks. Speaking of birdies are better, looks like it's the same players that we have posted on both sites. 6.5 for guys like Harry Hall, 7.5 for some of your studs. If it's going to get a little bit more difficult, that also includes the birdie average. So the birdie average out there for round two, I think was closer to 6.33 per round. If it's going to play to a 4.5 scoring average, it's probably going to be even lower than 6.3 birdies per round. So I would put the expected birdie average with your typical harder Sunday pin locations at something around 6 per round, mostly because of the change in wind, but those pin locations probably have something to do with it too. Your bogey average probably goes up to about 1.5 per round as well. So you're not talking massive differences out here with these averages, but they matter at the end of the day. When you have, birdie average going down, the bogey average going up, it adds up at the end of the day when you're looking at the strokes. Let's go back to this. So on Underdog, I just want to look at some of these birdie lines. So the strokes lines, they look rather consistent. Like Keegan Bradley, we don't have a line for over here on Prize Picks. So some of the birdie lines are a little bit different. So there's a lot of juice involved on them though. So like, for example, Keegan is juiced towards the over. So a little bit of a larger selection on Underdog where it's usually the other way around. That's rather interesting, I guess, out here for tomorrow. And a few guys like Aaron Rye, Chris Kirk. Yeah, I believe they're also posted over there on Prize Picks. The guys that they have at even money for their birdie or better lines are the ones that you're seeing over there on the Prize Pick side. So a little bit of a copy and pasting going on, I'd imagine, out there from site to site. But I guess you can't blame them. It's something that they do occasionally over here on each site. So Wyndham Clark's at 7.5, and he's got a little bit of a multiplier there. I'm curious where sites like Caesars, William Hill have the board posted. So let's take care of that curiosity. Let's just see what's going on. So McIntyre, Bradley, they're both juiced towards the over. That's at 6.5 birdies. At 7.5, guys like Hideki are juiced under. Hence why you had the multiplier favoring that over there in Underdog. A few other guys at 7.5. It's closer to even money for guys like a Patrick Cantlay. Same thing for Wyndham Clark. But for the guys at 7.5, they don't have that much faith in them going over that number, which I get. Getting to 8 birdies is tough. But the guys at 6.5, I would argue that they have way too much faith in them going over 6.5 too. So like, for example, like you have some guys like Grazerman that's -150 for the over. Like I like Grazerman this week. I actually bet him out here to win this event, but like I don't necessarily agree with that. Like Keegan Bradley, for example, McIntyre here at 6.5 and -155 over. If it's going to play a little bit more difficult, I don't have them at -155 to go over. Right? I have the field average closer to 6 per round. And a player like McIntyre, Bradley might be above average in your regular PGA tournament. Not so much when it's the top 60 players that we have in the world. So it's a tough slate because kind of like the last few days, I haven't completely agreed with where the sports books have had things priced, which It has its pros and cons. It feels a little bit uncomfortable when you don't agree with the general sentiment. You have all these different sites, showing you different data points that disagree with what you think. But at the same time, these websites like Underdog Prize Picks, they price based off these sports books. So if I disagree and I have, a take that's different than these sports books, it's going to be rather easy for me to exploit that. So I think the way to do it and the way that I'm going to play this slate is I'm going to try and take some fades. And the way to do that is to do it over on Underdog. So the reason for that, I'll show you guys over here on Prize Picks, is if you were to take 2 overs on strokes, it's only going to pay you 2.5x. Now, I was just choosing guys at random, so don't go out there and fade those 2 in particular. But you can see it's 2.5x on Prize Picks. Down here, it's 2.7x over here on Underdog. So a significantly better payout if you decide to enter it on the right site. So we're probably going to look at Underdog for a majority of these fades, and it's uncomfortable. I want to see these pin locations before I really go all in on this sort of edge, which, speaking of, we can try and see if they have it on the Underdog version, or sorry, the Fanduel version, I should say, over here on their shot tracker. They might have the pin locations already loaded in. So yeah, it looks like they do have these loaded in. So yeah, we can go through these. Books dropped the round scores another full stroke compared to round 3. I agree with that. You said it seems like it's too much, especially with the change in wind. That's why I'm saying that there might be an edge to taking some fades. So I think the pin locations that we're about to go through are going to be massive when it comes to making that determination. So let's just do that. I think this is a really important step for our process tomorrow. The weather, I don't think it's a massive impact. This could be a real half stroke, a stroke difference if these pin locations are harder. So hole 1, it's back here in the back right. Round 3, it was towards the middle right, which I told you guys was a lot easier than having it just over this bunker. So I think it's easier than round 2, undoubtedly, because it's there in the back right. But when it's in the back right as opposed to the middle right of the screen, it does demand a longer shot in. So I think it's marginally harder than round 3, but I don't think it's like crazy hard or anything like that. Hole 2 does not have the pin on there yet. So okay, I guess they're just putting these pin locations in, which might mean, by the way, that we're about to get them posted over there on the PGA Tour.com slate. But let me see if they have 10 in yet. Yeah, so they're literally still on hole number 1 when it comes to loading them in. Let's see if Draftkings is faster than them. Probably not. This is probably a pipe dream at best. But I really do want to see what they have for this. So yeah, they don't have anything on here that we can take a look at quite yet. These pin locations, if they're as hard as I think they're going to be, could put us on a few of these overs. So just taking a look at the odds, let's see if we can find anything that's plus EV. So Cantley is at 67. If he was 66.5, that could have been money. Where's Justin Thomas? So JT's not having the best week. He's minus 130 for his over. And that's with the current odds, right? So if we're going to find a plus EV value with the current board, and I think it's going to play harder than that. There's even more value than you would see on these sports books if I end up being right with that kind of assessment. So let's go through them. So 66.5 for JT, maybe. Both these throw it in the shopping cart. Xander, he got bumped from 66.5 down to 66. To go under this line at 66, he's got to shoot 65, which is a -8 round. Enough said right there. Shooting -8 is tough for anyone, let alone slightly harder conditions. That could be 4 shots gained to the field if it's only playing to like -4. Let's go through a few others, like Tony Finau at 67. I'm not sure if he has a line to compare to, but I guess let's check real quick. He's probably an earlier tee time, if I had to guess. Yeah, no line for comparison there, but like maybe even fading him with his knee issues. Matty Fitz, I know I pointed that one out when we were first going through the board. I'm just trying to find guys that, to go under a 67 strokes line, you've got to shoot -7. You've got to shoot 66 strokes, right, to go under this sort of line, which is, it's asking a lot, regardless of golf course, but especially if it's going to play slightly harder tomorrow. Let's keep going. So the guys at 67.5 and maybe like a little bit less, because they don't have to get the whole way to -7 to cover. They can get to -6 and they would go under that sort of line. Let's see. So these are my favorites just off the top. I would say that Xander Schauffele, the reason why you'd want to fade him is he's looked a little bit sketchy this week overall. Same thing with JT. So those would be form plays that you're fading for Sunday. Tony Finau, Fitzpatrick, they've played a little bit better this week. You're just fading talent level on those sort of plays. So Yeah, for JT to go under his line, I mean, he's got to shoot -7, right? To go under 66.5 strokes. I mean, that's just absurd. Like, it feels so bad without these pin locations to enter anything. So we are still going to wait on those before we actually like get to a slip. Let's go through prize picks as well and see what we've got. So what we have differently over here is some fairway props and some green and regulation props. The fairway average should be around 10 per round again. The issue I have with fairways at this sort of event is that you have a lot of fluky holes where it's impossible to even hit the fairway, even if you hit a perfect tee shot. So hole number 1 comes to mind. Hole 6 is another one of those holes. So if we were going to take like an over on fairways, we'd want it to be a player that lays up off the tee, not even so much somebody that like is accurate off the tee. We more so need to try and think psychologically of what players aren't going to be hitting drivers much. And those are the kind of guys you want to be taking for an over. So we could take a look at some of the averages to this point, how guys have fared with fairway percentage. That's got to give us a good idea who some of those players might be. So if we do that, you can see Aaron Rice, Sepp Straka have probably been pretty conservative off the tee if they're hitting all those fairways. Morikawa, Nick Taylor. So it's a lot of your shorter, more accurate players. And just going through the board to see who we have posted here, I don't think any of the guys at 10.5 are those elite tier drivers. So let's see who the first one is on the list that we can find in terms of accuracy. I guess it's Hadman here at 77%. And then who else? Hideki, he's also hitting quite a few fairways. Worth noting that in the lead, maybe he'll be a little bit more conservative. So that could be a little bit of an angle you take on a potential over on Hideki Matsuyama. In fact, let's throw him in the shopping cart out there for right now. And then your green regulation average, I would imagine that it's going to go slightly down with the harder wind direction that you heard talked about on the broadcast. I don't think it's going to go massively down. So if I was going to do anything here, I'd probably fade guys because they have everyone at 15.5, and that was the average with the easy conditions today. The key would be to find somebody here that ranks really low when it comes to green and regulation rate. So what we'll do is we'll go over here to stats. We'll bring up the green and regulation board, and we're going to try and find the lowest ranking player that we have out there on Prize Picks. So if I had to take a guess, it's either Henley, Fitzpatrick, Day, or Dietrich. So let's try those ones first. So let's try Fitzy first. Fitz is 155. Henley is 150. So Fitzy a little bit worse than Henley. If we take a look at their averages this week, let's go ahead and do that real quick. Sorry about that, guys. So Matt Fitzpatrick, I can't even find him on here. Where's he at? Matt Fitzpatrick. There he is. He's towards the middle end of the board when it comes to green and regulation percentage. And let's look at Russell Henley. Where's good old Russ Henley? Is he hitting a bunch of greens this week? He's not. Look at that. He's down there at 77%. So if we were going to choose between those two, I might actually side towards the Russell Henley fade just because he's playing a little bit worse this week. Let's go through a few others. So Jason Day, we want to look at Dietrich, and then we'll look at Keegan too. But I don't think Keegan ranks as poorly as some of the other two do. So yeah, Keegan's 95. Yeah, like I thought, he doesn't rank as low as some of the other players. Look at that. Jason Day is 164. And then what is Dietrich? Dietrich's in contention too. And look at that, 166. So maybe we don't even take Henley. Henley is a pretty conservative player too. So maybe we don't go with one of those two. Dietrich's in contention. That doesn't really bode well for his chances. And then let's see how J-Day's hitting the ball. At least I don't think he's doing well. You wouldn't think he would be if he's not towards the top of the leaderboard. But I guess let's check just to confirm our suspicions. So if we go to Jason Day, he's actually doing very well at green and regulation rate. Whereas Dietrich, he's towards the top end of the board, but he ranks lower when it comes to his green regulation rate. So I think the best fade when it comes to these green regulations, sorry, I took the wrong one off of there, is probably Thomas Dietrich. The reason for that is he's already been kind of sketchy when it comes to hitting greens. I think it's going to get a little bit harder out there tomorrow with the Sunday pins, but also you've got a player that's playing nervous. I mean, Thomas Dietrich is going to be feeling it out there tomorrow. He's starting up there in, I think it's third place heading into the final round, a few shots behind Colin Morikawa and Hideki Matsuyama. That could be a real factor. So yeah, let's put the Thomas Dietrich fade in there. We could take this over on Hideki. That one I'm a little bit more sketched about. But yeah, that under on Dietrich, we're for sure going to play on a slip over here in Prize Picks. What we're going to need to do is find some sort of pairing for it. So because it is an under, finding a positive stance play is preferred just so that we can get the full payout. But let's try and find the proper play to do it with. So Hideki hitting fairways. So him being in the lead's a double-edged sword. I mentioned him maybe being more conservative. That's true. But he's also going to be nervous out there on Sunday. So that is part of the reason, or I guess an argument against taking that kind of over. The reason I mentioned that is I was looking at the Xander versus Hideki prop, where I actually took it round 2 and it burned me. Did not get back to it for round 3. But for round 4, now that Hideki's up there towards the top, if he's feeling any pressure, Xander Schauffele is already a better player, already a better birdie maker. Like maybe we take his over on Sunday now that we have the added pressure on top of it. I don't know. I'm brainstorming. I'm trying to figure out what we could do for a pairing with Dietrich, but that's kind of where I'm siding right now. Let's see. And it is a 0.5 matchup, so if they tie, it would be a loss. Just a PSA on that, in case any of you haven't played that. You've learned that matchups aren't the move. Losing multiple matchups, even though your guy shoots 8 or 9 under, is brutal. With that being said, plus Dunlap plus 100 versus Harman. I like matchups, and yeah, it's tough even for showdown this week, bro. Like it just feels bad if you have like all these guys shooting -6 and you don't win a GPP. It's just you got to kind of change your expectations, right? You got to adjust the par in your head. Like a -5 rounds, you've almost got to look at like a +1 round at the end of the day. So I feel you on that, Birdie. Definitely tilts when you're looking at like your fantasy lineups. But yeah, if I was looking at those two, now that you've gone that out, right? You just had to vent a little bit. Now you can bet some matchups. Dunlop versus Harman, I would take the Dunlop side just because he's got more scoring ability. You know, if you want people here that have birdie or better percentage that can make a bunch of putts out there on Bermuda grass, neither one's been particularly good this week. It's why they're at the bottom of the leaderboard. But at least Dunlop is an aggressive player, young. He can take advantage of the par fives. If there's a drivable par 4, you know, he's got the power to get there. I'd probably go that way with Dunlop. Aber, good push equity at 67. I'm sketched out when it comes to taking the unders, man. Like, I still think we're going to see low rounds, but to shoot 66, I mean, you got to shoot -7 to do so. I'm a little cautious about it. I want to see the pin locations first. If the pin locations aren't all that bad, there's a chance that's the case. Last year, the scoring average on Sunday was like 6.5 under. So there have been years where the pin locations on Sunday haven't been all that hard. If that's the case, then maybe, but I want to see that first. You're also looking at Nick Taylor over you. Yeah, Nick Taylor much more consistent than Kevin Yu. Something that you have to really prioritize when you're playing those matchups is taking guys that have a high floor. And in that specific matchup, you're getting a plus money on somebody that I think is the higher floor player. I would bet that for sure. So I haven't looked at the stats on each player specifically. We can do that here together. In fact, we will. But just from like the overhead view, I like that a lot. It's just with how each player profiles. Let's take a look at it, though. So let's first off look at Nick Taylor. So Nick Taylor to this point of the week, he's gained off the tee, he's gained on approach. Great. That's exactly what I want to see. And then he's lost 6 strokes with the putter. Holy crap. It's alarming, but he's normally a much, much better putter than that. And then what has Kevin Yu done? Kevin Yu has gained 4, almost 5 strokes off the tee, lost on approach and lost with the putter. Yeah, I mean, this perfectly encapsulates what I was talking about. You saw Nick Taylor rate slightly gaining in both ball striking categories. And look at this. It is just craziness. +5, -3, -6 over there with the putting category. Yeah, Nick Taylor is who I'd go with. It's just his consistency. When you're playing in a matchup at a 50-50 format, that's what we want. Am I fading Aberg 7.5 birdies? I was thinking about it. That's the other thing we could do over here in Prize Picks. Is we could take a matchup, but we could also just fade the conditions and make it a slip there. The issue is it's only going to pay 2.5x if you went out there and did that. So that's the real holdup for me when it comes to entering that sort of slip. But yeah, 7.5 birdies. Wasn't Aubert like -160 under or something like that? Let me see. Let's double check on that, huh? So good old Ludwig. Yeah, he's minus 146 under. And then who else do they have up? It was Xander, who makes sense. And then Morikawa, they also have it 7.5. Morikawa 7.5. I mean, that's steep. I mean, I know that he's up there towards the lead. Look at that. He's minus 150 towards the under. I mean, I'm half tempted to do that. I mean, if we were going to go via the stats, I think fading Aubert is a better fade than Morikawa. But Morikawa is also playing with all the nerves of being in the lead. So I'm tempted to want to do something like this, where we're correlating it. We're playing against the conditions. The payout's going to kind of suck. It's only going to be like 4.25x if we want with that 3-man. But this is truly, I think the value, guys, is on fades. I know it sounds crazy on an easy golf course, but it all comes down to the pricing. And even if it's only a half a stroke harder, that's maybe it does play like to a -5 scoring average. Making 8 birdies is just insanity. It's going to be like gaining 1.5, 2 birdies to the field. You thought about taking a birdie better matchup with Hideki over Keegan. Ooh, so I like it stat-wise. I mean, Hideki's been just an absolute monster this week. The only downside, and it's not as much of an issue this week, if he was leading by 5 strokes in the US Open, it would be a much bigger issue about him being a little bit too passive. But yeah, with a lead, sometimes you see guys kind of take their, foot off the gas a little bit, I guess. They don't go out there and fully try, I guess, out there on Sunday. Hideki, I don't know if I worry about that because of how easy this golf course it is. So yeah, I would lean towards the over. Just remember with the 0.5 matchup that a tie would be a loss. Then you said he felt like Hideki's a winner before, so it's not as bad. Yeah, it's not the nerves I worry about. It's like the strategy component. If you're Hideki, you're only playing against Colin Morikawa. Let's say that you're up on Colin by a shot or two. Like, what's the incentive for you to go after a really tough shot? There's no incentive, right? If you've got a 1-2 shot lead and that's really all it takes, if you've got anywhere where there's any sort of trouble, like where you can make a double bogey on the golf course, you're going to avoid it, which for a birdie or better matchup is pretty impactful. For stroke matchups, maybe not as much, because being conservative, making pars is a good thing when you're going out there and doing a strokes bet. But for a birdie bet, it's not. And if you're going to take aim like 30 feet right of a pin, I mean, that's a death sentence for that hole right there. Unless you're making the 30-footer, you're not going to make a birdie for that hole with that player. So that's the issue with like Hideki on a matchup. That's kind of why I was looking at the Xander one, because Xander's odds, by the way, for birdies, just to give you guys those odds, Xander is -135 for the over at 7.5. And then you have Hideki up here, who's -165 under. So they're projecting him closer to 7. They're putting Xander closer to 8 birdies. That's almost a whole birdie difference right there. So I don't know. It's tempting. In fact, we'll have to see. It's tempting to get to just because of that nerve factor, I guess. And you're saying the prop is more you fading Keegan. Yeah, Keegan, I got to say, he's fadeable, right? He's getting up there. He is not an elite tier player. I could see it for sure. Like, even if he doesn't have the most aggression out there tomorrow, he could still definitely beat Keegan, because Keegan's far from a world beater, that's for sure. So let's figure out what we're going to actually do for our exposure here. I do want to check to see if they posted pin locations, which they have not, unfortunately. We'll double check on that in like 10, 15 minutes. Well, let's find a slip that we're going to enter. So I'm torn between doing this 3-man slip, maybe making it a 2-man fade slip, or taking one of these two out, being these two players, and then fading one of the matchups. So if we did that, I'd probably take Aubert out. I would fade Morikawa because he's been a little bit of a hot mess when he's been in contention before. Let me look at Aubert's shots gained metrics before I make that final determination. They had a really good round 3. Round 2, not his best. Round 1 was decent out there for Aubert. Overall, you add it up, pretty normal shots gained record, I'd say. Gaining with the ball striking, about a neutral with the 2 short game categories. Yeah, we'll probably leave it with Morikawa there then, just because Morikawa's dealing with those nerves. That's a little added X factor. And I guess we could do the same thing with Xander here, right? We could also play the nerve factor out there with Hideki. For this slip to hit, we've got to essentially hope that it's not a shootout between Morikawa and Hideki. If one or both of them gets out to like even just a slightly slower start, and by slower start, I just mean not lighting the course on fire. To go over a 7.5 birdie or better mark, you have to make birdie on pretty much half your holes, right? You get one birdie leeway out there with that kind of rate. But these kind of guys, if they're not getting out to super quick starts out there, I'd feel pretty decent about fading both of them. So if we did this, the reason why I like these birdie or better matchups, by the way, at least in like a 3-man slip like this would take it back to a 5x payout, despite us having 2 fades out there in the same lineup. So that's obviously advantageous over that 4.25x that we got for the 3 fades together, but we're also not getting the same kind of correlation that you were getting in that other kind of slip. So for now, until we get pin locations, those are the main 3 props that I'm looking at. And then over here, let's take Xander out, right? If we're going to bet on Xander, let's not have conflicting exposure that we're taking. What would a 3-man slip pay over here on Underdog? So it's 4.37x if it was 3 strokes lines. Let me see if they're adding any more strokes lines over here on DraftKings. They've been doing that the last few days. So let's see if there's anyone else that wasn't on there before, which it kind of looks the same based on the pricing that was posted before he went live. Yeah, I don't see anyone else that was on there that wasn't there before. Let's look at Fanduel. Maybe they're surprising us early. You never know. Nope, whole lot of the same. So yeah, they're not giving us the full board like they did for rounds 2 and 3. Maybe they'll do so in the morning. They've been adding a few things there as well. For example, the birdie or better lines over here in FanDuel, they've been posting during the morning hours. If I was going to enter anything over here, though, the JT fade makes sense with how terribly he's been putting this week. These pin locations, guys, that's the only holdup at this stage, right? Like if we get these harder pin locations, like I'm hammering these fades, and look at that. We got exactly what we were hoping for. So hole number 1 is in the back right, like they were telling us about. Hole 2 is a long par 3. It's in the back left. That's a pretty tricky pin location back there. Hole 3 is an easier pin there in the front right. There's a little bit of a backstop that you can use. Hole 4 is a tough one there, tucked in the back right corner. It's not impossible. You do have a little bit of a backstop there, but it does play a little bit longer and it's uphill. Hole 5 is there in the back left. That's a par 5. That's the one where you have to hit over the ravine. So I would say the back pin location is advantageous. So that one's a little bit easier. Hole 6, that is the shorter downhill par 4. That is the hardest pin location that you have on that hole. If you guys don't know about hole 6, there's a huge ridge that runs down the middle of it that takes everything towards the right side. So the reason why this hole location at 6 is so hard is it's nearly impossible if you're in the rough to get it to stay on that top shelf. So that's a tough one. So far, like holes 1 and 2, they look like really tough pin locations. 3 and 5 are a little bit softer. It looks like it's shading towards the harder side so far, for the first 6 holes at the very least. 7's a tough one. It's already a long hole. It's playing downhill. It's also going to be playing into the wind because of the new wind direction, and that hole's in the back right. So that's an extremely hard pin location. 8 is easy, so that's over there on the longer par 3. So, we point out the harder ones. We also got to point out the easier pin locations. 9 is a par 5. It's about the same as what we had for round 3. Reachable in 2, so that's not going to change all that much. 10 is a relatively straightforward pin location. The issue with 10, though, is that if you miss anywhere to the left of that pin, it's going to go to the left side of the green. So just like you had on hole 6, where you had a slope that takes everything to the right, hole 10 is bisected down the middle by a slope that takes everything towards the left side of this green complex. So yeah, that's actually a little tough, I would say, just because of that aspect. 11, that's a par 3. It's tucked over there on the left, close to a very steep embankment. If you miss to the left side of 11, it goes into a hazard and a lot of times is a drop. If you go over 11, which is in play because it's only like 6-7 paces from the back side of that back left, if you go over there, it's a lost ball sometimes. So that is a very difficult pin. 12 is up on a shelf on that right side corner. That's a tough pin location. 13 in the back left. It's a easier hole. It's playing uphill though, and it's going to be up into the wind. So yeah, this setup, 14 is easier though. 14 is the drivable par 4. That's as easy a pin location as we get. 15's a par 5. That's not a terrible pin location, but on like these tricky holes, it doesn't look all that easy. 16 is a shorter par 4. That one's not all that bad, but like 17, like that's a tough pin location. And then 18, it is a par 5, but that's the hardest pin location that we have at hole number 18. So I do think it's going to play a little bit tougher with the scoring. Part of that's going to come down to the wind direction too. If I had to guess, a -4.5, a -5 scoring average is where I'd put the field. So I don't think it's going to get drastically harder out there from day to day. But going through these pin locations, like the ones that really stand out to me as like, oh wow, like this, you can tell they're trying to make it harder. 7 is diabolical. 4 just absolutely sucks. Heck, 1 and 2 are much harder than what you had for today. You had on top of that ones like 13, 12 up on that shelf. You can see what they're trying to do, right? They're not trying to make it hard. They're just trying to make it that you're not seeing -7, -8 all over the place. You're going to see like -4, -5s out there all over the place. So that's what I'll say for the scoring averages out there for tomorrow. In terms of this slip over here, do we just want to make it the 2 fades? Actually, we'll do this for the 5x. So the reasoning that we're putting in this birdie or better matchup is so that the payout's a little bit better. As I mentioned before, fades on Underdog are easier to enter because they give you a full 2.7x payout. Let me see if they have those guys posted. So look at that. Yeah, they have Morikawa posted, but look at that. He's 0.83x out there for the under. The place to enter this is definitely over here on this site. So let's do that. Let's go over here. Let's add in the Xander Schauffele prop they were taken before, and it pays a full 5x payout if we were to hit all 3 of those props. So that's what we're going to do over there on the prize pick side. Let me put those back in there in case anyone didn't get it in the first time. Under on Dietrich, greens regulation. So you've got a few guys in contention here that were fading. Hideki, who's up there towards the top. Same thing with Colin Morikawa. And then also even Thomas Dietrich, who's up there in 3rd place. So it's a little risky. You've got guys that are all up here in form, but this isn't so much a fade against all these 3 players, but it's like a fade against the golf course, right? And how they're going to be playing out there in the afternoon. And then if we go over here to the underdog side, I like the payouts over here more. So we're probably going to go with just like a 2-leg slip for 2.7x. But let's try and find the best value available. Do I like Clark for better than 10.5 finishing position for 1.29x? Ooh, and thank you for the heads up, by the way. Appreciate that, Jamari. Let's take a look at his odds on like Draftkings. It's a good question. 1 second. They have good sims over there. My like top 5, top 10 in event stuff isn't fully developed quite yet. So I like to look at some of these other models. Let's see where they have Clark for a top 10. So they've got him at a 36% chance. So based on the number you're getting, right, you're getting a boosted payout there. It's probably a pretty fair number, I would say. I do think that Clark's going to have a good day, though. He's 1 shot off of the top 10. Now, the top 10 is not going to be -18. By the time we get to Sunday, it's probably going to be closer to like -22, -23. So you're essentially betting on whether Wyndham Clark can go out there and shoot -6, -7. And I think that kind of line is essentially asking him to go under his regular strokes line. So like if you were going to play Wyndham Clark to have a good day, I would much rather, and by the way, this might be like a hack to go out here and find like a slip to enter. The best way to do it might be to take something like that and then to offset like your fades, like to give you a better payout. So for some reason, I'm not seeing that Wyndham Clark prop, but yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm not against that at all. I don't think that it's like an overly big value, but I think if you use it the right way, it could be really helpful with your slips. So let's see. So this JT one's plus EV value. That's why I still have it in the shopping cart. Tony Finau, we could fade the approach play, which has not been that good this week. We can also fade the injury. So if I show you that, Tony Finau over here, he's lost strokes on approach, and he's also lost off the tee. I mean, yeah, that's just going to have to be a given then. Let's see. Who else has been completely dog shit with their ball striking? Let's just look at that. Let's sort it by the worst ball striking players of the week. So I know for a fact we don't have a Davis Riley line. I know for a fact we really don't have any of these guys posted. Maybe there's a Brian Harmon prop up. Probably not. Yeah, nothing for Brian Harmon posted. Let's see who the worst player that has a line is. Maybe it's Bezainhout. So let's look at what Seabez has done to this point. So there's Seabez. Round 3 looked a lot better. He did gain like all of his strokes putting though, but over the 3 rounds, you can see he's lost 5 off the tee and lost on approach. Like Seabez, Zaynhoot, he might be a prime fade candidate out here for tomorrow. Which, speaking of, does he have a line posted? I would imagine he does not. Yeah, he's not going to have a line posted. But I think it's fair to say that he'd probably be juiced over there at 67 strokes. Let's see, what's his line over here? Yeah, he's also at 67 and a half. Let's throw him in there. We also have the Tony Finau fade that we could take. I'm going to take the Justin Thomas one out for right now. The reason why I want to take him out, I think the line makes sense. It's plus EV value. I very well might end up fading him in a slip later on tonight. Here's the issue, though, is he's been really good with the irons. And out of principle, I think I'd rather fade guys that have been sucking with the irons. So speaking of, let's go to the full event. Let's sort this by the worst approach players. And let's see who's on the board. So Cam Young, yeah, dude. Cam Young's putting way over his head, too. Like, Cam Young, if he's at 67, like, I could be all over that. So they don't even have a line posted for him right now. Let's see if I refresh this, it gets reposted or something. But, like, Cam Young just, I don't think he's going to play very well. In fact, he has a line over here on Prize Picks that I think I'm going to throw in the shopping cart for a slip after we get off the live stream here because I don't think he's going to have a very good day. Let's go through a few other ones on here. So there's Cam Young. What about Kirk? And then I guess Eric Cole is another one that we could look at. So let's see if Chris Kirk has anything posted. He's at 67.5 or 6.5 birdies. I've got to say the 6.5 birdie line is like a no-brainer fade for him. And the reason I say that it's a no-brainer fade for him is because he's not a very aggressive player. He's not a high birdie percentage player. And I think the average is going to be less than 6.5 birdies. So I'll throw him in the shopping cart over there too. Who else do we got? So there's Kirk. I don't think Dunlap has anything posted. Hadwin. I guess Hadwin probably does have some stuff up, but let's see. So there's Adam Hadwin. Yeah, he's also over there at 6.5. See, the payout absolutely shit, even if you correlate these like this. But like, what does it look like if we just took 2 unders on birdie? So that would be a 2.58x. The multipliers with those are a little bit worse than what we have on the strokes. So just to go back to that, if we were to take the Tony Finau fade and we matched it up with, who's the other strokes fade we took? Let's go back to that. Let's go back to the shots gained metrics. It was, go back to the ball striking. Sorry, Zaynhoot, right? Who was just losing a bunch of strokes when it came to his off the tee play. If we faded these two, the payout is just a lot easier to handle at 2.7x. Who else can we take out of there? There's Eric Cole, Chris Kirk towards the top of that. There's Tony Finau, as I was mentioning before. If we just look at approach play, that might even be the better way to look at it, like we were going through before. Like at Cantlay, he hasn't had the best approach week. He's just been doing it all out there with the flat stick. Like he could be a prime candidate for a fade. Sahith Theegala, as we were mentioning before. Let's see where Theegala's at. He's at 67 strokes. The hard part here is trying to choose between all of these, right? Like, I think Theegala has a line post over here. Let's see. So, yeah, he's at pretty much even money in 67.5. I think this might be the move to do something like this. If we were to take these two over, we get the push equity there at 67. They've got to shoot a 66 to go under. It means they have to shoot -7 to go under that sort of line. So what we're going to do, we're going to take the 2.7x slip out there on those two. So obviously I'm going to be entering more value out there before lock. These are a few that I was spitballing out there. But for all of that, make sure to check out my Patreon page for all the slips that I'm entering and all the different slips over there on Underdog Prize Picks. Those are two. Hopefully it gives you guys a little bit of exposure that you guys can enter yourself. I'm going to go ahead and enter those myself before we get to the 3-ball section. But what we're going to do for the ending of this live stream, if you have any questions, I'll still touch on those out there for the props. But we're going to go through some 3-balls and matchups and that sort of stuff. So let me bring up the 3-balls out there on each site. And let's get this thing moving along. So let's go over here to the 3-balls. Got them up out there for each site. And then let me enter this shit myself. Henley worth fading for an over 67. He could be. He hasn't had the best week this week, that's for sure. I was more so looking for guys that were leaking strokes with the ball striking. But Henley hasn't had a banner week either. So, yeah, you could consider him for that. Just 1 second here, guys. If it looks like I'm looking away from the stream, it's because I am. I'm on my phone entering the slip right now. But yeah, it's the Tony Finau over on strokes that we took. 1 second, my guy. And then Thagala over at 67 strokes. There it is. All right, that's 1 slip banged out. And then the other one, I got to go to my laptop to do it. That's what you have to do when you start getting limited on all your accounts. You have to jump through hoops just to enter slips. It's annoying, but when you've done it for over 2 years like I have, kind of used to it. It's just a part of the process at this point. My buddies, anyone that sees me doing it, they're like, what the hell? Like, why do you have to go into another thing? It's like a whole ass fucking explanation. But that's hey, when you're a winning bettor and the sports books just want to run you out of their doors, well, that's what they do to you. It's terrible, right? Like they welcome all the losers. They're like, oh yeah, come in, play all you want. The winners, they want nothing to do with you. Quite literally. So let's do this. So it was under on Morikawa birdies. That was over there. It was an under on greens regulation for Dietrich that we took. And then it was the over on the matchup against Hideki. That's right. And that's 5x payout. Just confirming that I have everything in there the right way. And let's enter the shit. All right. Looks like we're good to go. Little 5x slip. Decent unit size deployed on it. And hey, if it hits, get a good amount of units back since we're putting a decent unit size on it. So yeah, entered that 3-man that we took over there in Prize Picks. Was just able to enter that myself, I should say. And then yeah, just confirming that I had everything in there right. And then same thing on Underdog. I think we're all set. Finau overstrokes ripped off Underdog. Yeah, they when they see a bet of my unit size, they panic on Underdog. Let's just say that it's I don't mean this as like a flex, but it's quite literally my single bets are bigger than what most people have on their Underdog, like as a total amount on their site. So it's alarming, I would guess, when they get those kind of bets, but whatever, they're gonna do their thing. All right, let's go through some matchup bets. So let's go over here to the site, and we're going to go through the 3 balls specifically. What I like to do in these 3 balls, you may have seen it out here on the live stream yesterday, is I don't like betting these like plus 100 to plus 150 guys. I'm usually looking at the second or third guy in any given group, and I'm usually looking for guys that can pop with their putter and go out there and have a spike round. So we're going to skip a lot of these groups. I'm probably not going to have a ton of matchups that I want to enter, but we're looking for high upside spike players that are worth the price of admission. So going through this, like an Echeverria is like a perfect example. Let's keep going through it though. I'm not going to bite on any one of those 3. It's just not good enough odds out there, in my opinion. A Pendrith at plus 170, like maybe we're cooking there. Let's keep going through these though. We're just trying to brainstorm at this stage. I don't hate a Jaeger at nearly plus 200. Horschel's just not playing good enough golf for me to rally behind him, but against Justin Thomas, that's like a Davis Thompson at plus 200. Like I might be swayed to go in that direction. If we keep going through this, you got Finau, Clark down there. I'd be tempted for a Clark at nearly plus 200. If we keep going through this even further, yeah, those are, I really like these last few, like that Davis Thompson one. JT doesn't have a good round. It's essentially a head-to-head versus him and Billy Horschel. I feel like he's winning that most of the time. Let's keep going through these, though. So you got Cam Young, Straka's plus 200 or plus 200. I don't know about that. Pavon, he's been very mediocre this week. He did not come through for our matchup today. That one's probably a stay away for me as well. Do like the Harry Hall odds there, but not going to take him against a Sunjay M. And then for this last group here, if we're going to look through like all the favorites, that one's a complete toss-up too. So going through these, Cantlay is losing a bunch on approach. Finau's injured. I really, really like that Wyndham Clark one. This Davis Thompson one, I kind of like picking on Justin Thomas a little bit. So I feel like we're definitely going to bet that one. Jaeger versus Siwoo and McCarthy, that one's a narrative play. So let's take that out. Narrative plays, by the way, are the weakest plays that you can possibly have. Pendrith, he's ball striking it well versus Keegan and Fitzpatrick. They're all kind of ball striking it well, though, so we're going to take that one out, too. And then the top one here, it's plus 330, mostly because Xander Schauffele's in the group. But Echeverria is either a huge hit or miss kind of guy. Like, if he's making his putts, he's going out there and he's rolling his rock, he could, I don't want to say easily beat Xander Schauffele, but it's conceivable for him to go out there and get the job done. It's still sketchy, though. It's still a plus 330 sort of prop. So the two that we're going to take out here for the sake of this live stream would be these two. We're going to go with the Davis Thompson, the Wyndham Clark one. I do want to do our line shopping, make sure we're getting the best line available. So let me go through this real quick, make sure that the odds aren't better elsewhere. I'll try to do this as quick as humanly possible. So yeah, Wyndham Clark's plus 200 on FanDuel, so that's the better spot to take that. And then Davis Thompson, let's find the odds there. So Thompson's, yeah, plus 220 over here on the FanDuel side. So probably enter it on that site. If you want to just like double check it, make sure it's not higher on Caesars, we can do that as well real quickly. So not there, not there. There's the Wyndham Clark. So still better over there on FanDuel. And then let's find the Davis Thompson group. There he is. And he's plus 210 and it was plus 220 over there on the FanDuel side. So just like yesterday, the best odds that you had available was over there on FanDuel. And I want to see if they have them on Hard Rock Bet yet, because yesterday they didn't have them posted quite yet. And I wasn't able to enter them on live stream, but I would like the opportunity to be able to. So let's see what we have on here. If we can get better odds than what we're getting on FanDuel, then I'm going to enter 1 or even 2 units likely on this matchup. So let's see what we have. That's the regular tournament line. Okay, wrong tab. And do we just, so still, just like yesterday, guys, nothing posted when it comes to the 3 balls quite yet. So I'll have to check in the morning whether I'll have those to enter myself. But these are the 2 that I'll be checking on. The Wyndham Clark at plus 200, I can get the same number. I'll be thrilled. Plus 190, I'll probably still play it. And plus 220 ideally, but plus 200 or plus 210, I'm probably playing that on Davis Thompson as well. So what I'm looking for in these 3-ball matchups is either a stat edge that we can go out there and exploit. That's the first one that we have here. Clark's hitting the ball better, a lot better, and it's not even close. He's hitting it a lot better than Finau and Cantlay. And then in the second group here, you've got Horschel, who's completely lost, and they're treating Justin Thomas like he's playing extremely well, but he's not playing well this week. So that's kind of the idea out there with those 2 3-balls. And, you know, I gave you guys a few other ideas. Like, I think the Echeverria one is one that I might bet myself too, but that would be like a half unit kind of sprinkle. You're trying to find somebody to do good tomorrow. Your candidate was Grazerman. Yeah, there's definitely still going to be guys that play well. So, you know, it's worth noting, right, that, you know, I might be taking fades and stuff. I still think there's going to be some low rounds. Grazerman's not a terrible candidate at all. He's a really good putter. I thought he'd play well at this golf tournament. A few other names to throw out there, I guess. I mean, just looking at the stats, if I was going to guess who was going to play well on Sunday, it would be these 3 guys. So this is just shots gained to ball striking, by the way, that I sorted this by, and it's over the first 3 rounds. So the full event so far, McNeely with 7 shots ball striking. I mean, he looks like he's primed to go off. Johnny Vegas, Cam Davis here, Harry Hall, he's towards the top of the board, though, so that's not so much of a hot take. And then Grazerman, you can see down here, right, 3.2 shots gained ball striking. He's another candidate for that kind of a day. So, yeah, I can't disagree with you there, and I guess there's a few others on top of that. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got out there for the round 4 stream. Hopefully you feel more prepared out there for Sunday's action. Best of luck with everything that you're going with, whether it's prop slips, showdown lineups over there for Sunday, or over there on the matchup side. Make sure to check out my Patreon page for all of the slips that I'm taking as well. That will include the 2 slips that you saw out there tonight, but of course, all the other slips that I'm entering before lock. So I'll be looking at the fades, trying to figure out what to take on Underdog and Prize Picks for all of the action, also all the explanations and stats that I'm using out there for my slips. Make sure to join for all of that. There's a link in the description of the video to go out there and join on there. Not only can you get access to all the different slips as I've gone through, but I also have all my DFS stuff on there as well. So I'm going to go ahead, share my screen, show you guys what that looks like. I guess, hey, if you made it this point of the live stream, you get the top of my projections for free out here on Sunday. This is the showdown sheet that I do over there for my Patreon members, and that's over there for DraftKings DFS. We've got all the ownership, player pool out there for Sunday, and how I'm approaching this kind of slate. So make sure to join over there for all that behind the scenes info. Best of luck out there for all of your exposure tomorrow, and let's get it.